Almighty God, grace my lips of clay, that my words today may be more than just my words, that your Spirit may speak, that I may be able to hear your Spirit. We may all hear and feel that same Spirit in this church today. Amen. 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 They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. But where our desires are and our hopes profound, felt as a wellspring that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of their own land they are known, as the stars are known to the night. As the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches upon their heavenly plain, as the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end they remain. The communion of saints, the great cloud of witnesses that we read about in the book of Hebrews and elsewhere in the Bible, has always reminded me of the stars at night. The extraordinary beauty of things which appear to us intellectually to be so distant, and yet they are immanent to us. They have an emotional effect upon us. I look at the star Vega and its beautiful blue, pale blue star. And I know it's a heck of a long way away. But it's the same star that I mused upon just a month before I was ordained, and I was on the beach in Pariachora in Crete, in the Greek islands. And I looked up and I saw that same star that I could see tonight if I was to go outside. And it touched me emotionally. How much more so? Those stars in their millions who have been beloved of each and every one of us. There's no one here today who hasn't lost somebody. And that perception, that language we use, that false language of losing somebody, that's what I wanted to address. I wanted to preach about the communion of saints. The communion of saints is not a universally accepted doctrine nowadays, but it always made a lot of sense to me. Martin Luther didn't like it. He made a few comments, but the churches that still hold to it have a certain agreement with what you might call folk religion. That religion which is not doctrinally correct, which doesn't fit with dogma, but which people believe because it fits with their experience of life and of death. So the communion of saints is the idea that through the Spirit, the breath of God which touches each and every one of us, we are not sundered from those who have died. That the veil of death is nothing more than that, it's a veil. It is something which appears strong and is weak. Just as Christ appeared weak and was strong. Appearances are around us everywhere. The world which we cleave to is a world of appearances. It is a world where we may be judged according to any number of different attributes which are utterly false, which have no reality other than that reality that human beings choose to give to them. Whether you're rich or poor, young or old, black or white, gay or straight, dead or alive. We have created divisions from what we see around us, but those divisions are other than God sees. And the Christian life is very much about learning to see as God sees. And when we learn to see as God sees, we find striking and extraordinary things. Our denomination has spent 40-odd years learning to see as God sees. That's really what it's been doing. There's been a political side to it too. There's been an issue side of LGBT rights. But almost that is a side effect of what was originally received. What was originally received was the ability in one person, and then in many people, to see more as God sees the world. To see humanity more as God sees humanity. Now, it worked itself out in Troy Perry's life and ministry with this passionate fight for LGBT equality and rights, and this belief that the LGBT community were within the grace of God. But what he was teaching had much deeper significance than that. What he was teaching was the importance of ever and again wiping away the grime from our eyes, which is the grime that we put there, that was put there, the grime that we pick up, the grime which you can't avoid, and seeing the world as God sees the world. Now, the significance of this today is not in any particular political sense. I'm not talking today about any group that we currently treat badly. And if we learn to see the world through God's eyes, through the eyes of grace, then we will understand better. I'm talking about that divide which is pressing on us today, that issue which terrifies so many people, that issue which is seen as being negative for so many people, and that is that divide between life and death. We must start believing our propaganda. We have to start living not just on the belief that life is eternal, and that those who have passed beyond live in the grace and glory of God. But we must start living our lives as if this is the truth. Yes. Yes. This is probably the biggest step of faith we'll be called upon to make. It really is stepping out there into the void. The more, however, you get to see death, the easier it becomes. I've seen a lot of death. A lot of death. And for me now, it's not an issue. It is not a challenge to believe this. This is the easiest thing for me. There are many other things which are still very difficult for me. But the death thing, the more I've seen of it, the more I have realized that it is a tenuous veil which is rent, a very tenuous veil indeed, because you can glimpse through it as someone passes away. You can sense and you can feel that something is happening, that someone is moving, that the transition is happening. And then after it, you're left with an object. And the person may have been completely silent and still just before that, but you know when the change has happened. You know when it is transition. So the more you see that, the less this becomes the challenge. But I understand in human lives, especially in our recent experience, there's been a lot of it about, a lot of challenging transition. And then this is going to be something which we as a congregation are not just going to have to react to, but we are going to be called to lead the way. And why? Well, because that's what MCC does. And if MCC doesn't lead the way, it might as well be UCC. It might as well be any one of a number of different churches. Yes. So we have to lead the way in this, in understanding that the dead need to be raised to their rightful position amongst the living. Amen. That the belief that we are faced with a punishment at the end of our lives, that we are being punished when somebody that we love is raised into the glorious presence of God. Because that's what's happening. And as we heard from our text, we must not apologize for the hope that we have. Amen. We must not be ashamed of the hope that we have. We must be willing to speak that hope, because that will bring hope to others' lives. At a guess, how many people in this valley do you think are frightened of death?
Like most people.
Who talks about it anymore? It's becoming an issue which is something like, I don't know, nudity or social, people don't talk about it. And if you look at the great cemeteries of this country and in my own country, it was once something where a life was glorified on death. Great monuments were raised to the dead, with confident statements written there, with a glorious hope written upon them.
Yes.
And now, it's almost that people are put away quietly.
That's right.
They are put away. Well, I don't believe in that, and I can't preach it. Therefore, if we are going to be prey to fear, prey to terror, when we live and stand by our declaration of hope, then we will die. Because we have to be able to declare that hope, even in the midst of real despair and challenge, because pretend despair and challenge is no challenge at all. It has to be really threatening before God is of complete use to us. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? When we can manage, we manage. When we can cope, we do things ourselves. And when we are faced with situations where we cannot cope, when we are faced with our own humility, then we can rest upon the changelessness of God. And at that point, our relationship becomes real and genuine and at its most full.
Yes.
It's not something we must be ashamed of. We find ourselves in a hospital, we find ourselves sick, we find ourselves struggling with depression, we find ourselves in any number of situations where we want to be delivered from it, or we want to deliver ourselves from it most frequently. There is no shame in calling on God, because we have a lively hope in Jesus Christ. I know I'm sounding very Christian this morning in church, very Christian this morning. But the problem is, I am.
We are Christians.
We are a Christian denomination. We are not a Unitarian church. And there's nothing wrong with the Unitarians. Nothing wrong with them at all. But I'm not a Unitarian minister. I am a Christian priest and pastor. I said the priest thing, didn't I? Well, the bishop said that. You're a priest forever, a priest like Melchizedek of old. But I also overlay that, my true calling, which is as a pastor in MCC. So I'm not going to go on, because we have a lot of things to do. We have a chance to honour those who have passed. And we have a chance to light some candles in an act of remembrance, which, again, brings into this world a symbol of those who have passed. Like those stars, a candle does the same thing. So, as I've said just a moment ago, death is probably the biggest article of faith that we have to get past. It's that biggest challenge. It must be like St. Peter when he was in the boat and Jesus was calling to him, and it was a challenge to step into the water, step onto the water. Well, we are in a similar position. We say, well, will we walk on the water? Will we get to Jesus? Or will we sink into the abyss? And it's the abyss that terrifies us. We see that as the only two options. But you must remember that, thanks be to God, we float.
Yes.
Amen?
Amen.
There is no sinking into the abyss for us. We, as created children of God, float. And many of us are so full of hot air that it would be very surprising if we did. So step out in faith. And on this Memorial Day, and this day when we remember Mac's passing, we have to balance this. We have to balance this. We can't skip past it, and we can't wallow.
Yes.
We have to see it for what it is. Memorial Day, it is the actions of human beings taking away the lives of, well, millions in the last 100 years. I was looking at the casualty lists for the various wars in the various countries that fought in the First World War and the Second World War, and then Korea, and then Vietnam, and others beside. And we have to see that as, on the one side, a human historical thing, which is terrible and tragic. But on the other side, the same spiritual accession to glory, which we would hope for our dearly beloved who are close to us. In Jesus' name, amen.